Joma, welcome aboard.
Hi everyone, this is Joni, the admin officer of Kokora Household. So in today's video, we're gonna discuss international travel. So we are about to head out from the Philippines, flying to Finland in a few days, and we've been processing documents for months now. So I thought it would be interesting to make a video of what you will need to be able to fly out from the Philippines and head to a different country. Because times are pretty confusing at the moment if you want to travel. I thought to break it down into 4 topics and explain what we had to go through to be, hopefully, to be able to fly in a few days. So first we are gonna discuss case Sienna, second, vaccinations, third, departure country requirement, and then lastly, what's needed for the arrival country. The case Sienna is not so relevant for every one of you, but for us it's a major part of this planning international travel. As you might know, Sienna is our newborn and we can't travel without her, so we had to fix all the documents to be even dreaming of traveling abroad. So that started already from the birth. I'm gonna touch base it here, but if you are not traveling with a newborn, this is not relevant for you, just skip straight to the vaccination part. So the case Sienna, it started already in March. So obviously to be able to travel abroad, we had to fix her travel documents, which means passport. To get the passport here in the Philippines, you first need to get the PSA, Philippine Statistics Authority birth certificate. And apparently we learned that it takes a while to acquire. So from the hospital, they'll send this document. I'll show you. So, hospital initiates the birth certificate processing. So that happened to us as well. The hospital actually confirms all the details, confirms the name, date of birth, and so forth, submits the details to the city hall. And after 2 weeks, we were able to acquire the first certificate of live birth from the city hall. But at that time, we already knew that if you need to get a PSA birth certificate, and the city hall is the one who will file this birth certificate to PSA, it will take 5 to 6 months, 5 to 6 months to get the official birth certificate from the PSA system. So we were looking for ways how to do it faster. They told us at the city hall that there is actually a way how you can make it happen faster, and that way is that you come to pick up the birth certificate from the city hall and submit it to PSA yourself, and that will make the process significantly faster. I don't know why, but it worked for us. So we got a birth certificate from the city hall, and we also got a registry number from the city hall. So I guess that registry number is tied up to the birth certificate at the national system. So with these, we went to PSA, we filed, and after 2 weeks, we were able to already order the birth certificate online. So instead of waiting 5 to 6 months, we were able to do it in roughly 4 weeks. So that's a good tip for everyone who wants to process their PSA faster. Do it yourself instead of the city. So this PSA birth certificate, we need it for passports. So Sienna is now a dual citizen. We've got both citizenships for her, the Philippines and Finland. We started by applying for a Philippine passport. I know many of you might have had problems booking a slot to get a passport or to get passport renewed. We were lucky. I was able to find a slot to 1.5 months away, which seems to be more or less the norm. If you don't see any slots in the system, just keep going back, because DFA will open new slots for passports in the system at random times, I assume. So for us, it worked out well. But then the next hurdle we actually faced was when we started to apply for the Finnish passport. The PSA certificate we still have to validate in DFA. So we have to get the apostille, which is kind of this international recognition that the document is valid before we submit it to the Finnish embassy here in Manila, for them to then send it to Finland so that Finland can process Sienna's citizenship. And then eventually when we get the citizenship approved, then we can apply for the passport. But what I wasn't expecting was that the apostille also needs an appointment. So there's a different appointment system for the apostille, and surprise, surprise, also a 1.5 months queue. So that kind of messed up our plans of traveling to Finland. I think we would have gone already earlier, but because we couldn't get the apostille slots, we couldn't apply for the citizenship, and we couldn't apply for a passport. We knew that things are dragging, so instead of waiting for the Finnish passport, we decided to apply for a Schengen visa for Sienna for her Philippine passport. When we got the Philippine passport, that was more or less the time when we also got the apostille, which looks like this. So we were able to submit the citizenship application to the embassy. So at this point, we already had a Philippine passport for Sienna. We went to the embassy. We got a Schengen visa for Sienna, only to be told 1 week after that we cannot use the visa because they found out that we've applied for a citizenship, and if you become a citizen, you cannot have a visa in another passport. So, at this point, we were a few weeks away from the flights. We thought everything is okay, but we had to bring the passport back to the embassy for revocation of the visa. So basically, back to the square one, Sienna didn't have needed travel documents. So luckily, when this came out, the Finnish authority who issues the personal identification numbers and approves the citizenship, they were pretty helpful. So I gave them a call, explained the situation that we are supposed to travel in a few weeks' time, but the citizenship application has been tagged for September processing. But now we're in a situation where, because we filed the citizenship application, our visa was revoked and we cannot travel because we don't have a visa and we don't have a citizenship. So at this point, they were very helpful. They actually processed it the next day. I got the personal identification number, rushed to the embassy right away, got a slot for the passport appointment, got all the documents in for the passport issuance, took an express passport, and Sienna has a Finnish passport to travel with. So if the authorities in Finland didn't process the citizenship faster than what was the original schedule, we couldn't have even dreamed of flying now in a couple of days. But now, as Sienna is dual citizen, she can get out from the Philippines and fly with us to Europe. So that's basically the story of Sienna. So we had a lot of up and downs in processing the papers and documents for her. It takes months to get it done, but if you are in a same situation that you need to get travel documents for your newborn, few tips. 1, process the PSA yourself. You save roughly 5 months doing it. And 2, book the passport slot in advance. I think ideally, if you know that you're gonna do PSA yourself, just book the slot already after the birth. And then if you need an apostille, so if you are applying for another citizenship, a foreign citizenship, most likely you will need the apostille, so book that slot in advance as well. But now when we're done with Sienna, we can move on to the actual beef of the video. So, the first topic of travel requirements I want to cover are the vaccines. So we were lucky enough to be already fully vaccinated at this point, both of us, Camille and I. Sienna obviously not, she doesn't get any vaccines yet regarding COVID. We were fully vaccinated in July. The requirement for you to be fully vaccinated is basically, if it's a 2-dose vaccine, you got the second shot 2 weeks prior. So after 2 weeks, you're considered fully vaccinated. We have our vaccination cards. At this point, we weren't sure what is actually needed to prove your vaccination status abroad. And another thing is we didn't know how to prove if the LGU vaccination cards are actually approved when we arrive back to Manila to get a shorter quarantine. After getting fully vaccinated, we booked a slot at the LGU, our LGU, for a vaccination certificate. So basically, instead of the card, they are actually giving you a stamped vaccination certificate, which is supposed to be for a local travel, that says that, okay, these are the vaccines you got. Basically, it says the same information as the vaccine card, but it has an additional stamp and control number, which they can use to verify the vaccination. So with these, we thought we were good. So when we come back, we're just gonna show these vaccination cards from the LGU, and we're good to go. But then we started seeing posts that people are applying for the WHO Cartejon. How do you pronounce that? I don't know, the WHO yellow passport, vaccine passport. So just in case, because we didn't know what the requirements are in Europe, I was asking my friends who are traveling there now from abroad, what do they use to prove? It's a bit fluid still, so I think anything you have in English is approved at this point, but I know EU is also releasing this new vaccine database. So basically you have an app, which is a EU-wide database, and from there you show your vaccination. So they have a legit database there, which we obviously don't have, being vaccinated in the Philippines. So we decided to book a slot, yet another slot, to Bureau of Quarantine to get our yellow official international vaccination certificates or vaccination passports. This has a QR code which anyone can scan, and it gives all the details, our names, age, sex, vaccinations we got, and the dates we got them. So anyone who we show this to, they can actually verify that we actually got the vaccinations. So with these, we are pretty confident that we have everything needed to prove our vaccination status. I think DICT or DOST here in the Philippines is building the database and building the app for you to be able to prove your vaccination status here through an app. But for now, I think the best way, at least for us, is to get the yellow passport, which is recognized internationally. That was it from vaccines. If you get fully vaccinated, I think that makes the travel a lot easier requirement-wise. So not only safer for you, but also easier to enter another country. What you need to consider though is what vaccine you got and what vaccine is recognized in your destination country. So for example, I know there are differences in Europe. Some countries only accept the vaccines which are approved by EUA, so the EU authority. But Finland is an exception from that. Finland approves all the vaccines approved by EUA and WHO. So that makes it easy also from the Philippines to travel to Finland, because they recognize Sinovac, which is given here to, I think, half of the people who've been vaccinated. So at least to Finland, you can enter with that. It's recognized, and that takes off the requirement of quarantine and RT-PCR test. But moving on with our lives, requirements flying out of the country. So always make sure that you can actually, number one, you can actually fly out from the country. So Philippines has been restricting even outgoing passengers last year. Now it hasn't been the case anymore. Now during the latest ECQ, the hard lockdown, international travel is still allowed. Domestic is not, but international travel is still allowed, which is good for us because we are supposed to fly out during this hard lockdown period. But we have to keep looking if there are any changes to that, or if the airlines are reducing their flights now, because might be that not so many people fly. They can't travel to Manila for their flights, so they are rescheduling. So we have to keep looking at news and make sure that our flight is still ongoing. So at the moment, there are no restrictions to fly out from the Philippines, but what is important for you to check before you head to the airport, check it 1 week ahead, whether the destination country requires RT-PCR, because then you have to take it in the Philippines, usually within 72 hours before your flight. And also the airline might require for you to RT-PCR. There might be exceptions if you're fully vaccinated, but there might not. So it might be that for you to be able to board the plane, you need the PCR test to be done. So make sure that you check both of those. In our case, it seems that the airline is not requiring PCR test. They base the requirement of PCR to the destination country you're heading to. But for us, we are actually going to PCR ourselves before the flight, just in case we get stuck during transit. So we're doing one-hop strategy going to Finland. There are no direct flights. We have to stop over, change planes. And if the connecting flight gets canceled, our departure from here gets delayed, or there's some other hiccup with our travel, we get stranded in the transit country, I checked, they will require PCR test even from fully vaccinated travelers if they want to enter the country. So if we end up in a situation that for the flight has been canceled, next flight is in 2 days. Of course, we don't want to be stuck at the no man's land at the airport. We want to then go through the customs, the border control, go to the city itself, spend time there instead of spending 2 days at the airport. And for that, we will need PCR tests. They would have a PCR test available at the arrival lounge, but then of course the results take half a day to arrive. So just in case, for us to be able to enter the transit country, and just in case, because the requirements change so fast now regarding the receiving country, regarding the airlines and so forth. So we will just, for security, we will just PCR ourselves. So at least that won't be the reason we can't board the plane. Another additional hurdle for us Putis in the Philippines is the Immigration Exit Clearance, ECC, Immigration Clearance Certificate, I think. So basically when you're here, if you're on a tourist visa, you are staying over 6 months, you have to get it from the Bureau of Immigration before you go. It basically checks that you haven't done anything criminal, there are no searches on you, so you're not trying to flee the country without paying your dues. For us who have legit visas, if you have a work visa, if you're a resident, you will need that. Usually you get it from the airport. I think in this case as well, I would have gotten it from the airport. But again, to minimize the risk, if there is a disturbance with the issuance of ECCs at the airport, I already got it from the Bureau of Immigration in advance to be able to fly out. So no need to pay that anymore at the airport. I should show that and I should be good to go. So the last thing we want to discuss are the requirements of the country you're arriving to. So in our case, Finland has this online system called FinEntry, which you have to submit. You don't have to, but it makes your life much easier when you have done the registration of your arrival to the system. So basically here you define where you're flying from, what are your flights, if you get vaccinated, when was the first vaccine, when was the second dose, what was the vaccine, have you taken PCR before the flight? Yeah, basically those are where are you staying, what's your contact number and so forth. So you go through this questionnaire online and then you confirm your identity and then it gives you the results. Basically it says what is needed from you to be able to enter the country and when you enter if you need to quarantine. So for us as fully vaccinated travelers, Finland is not requiring us to get the PCR test here locally. Finland is not requiring us to get the PCR upon arrival. And Finland is not requiring us to quarantine upon arrival. So basically, when we get to Finland, we are free to go, free to roam. I think we still want to play it safe. We're gonna take a few days off before we see my parents and granny and so forth. But on the paper, we are not required to quarantine. I've also heard stories because of course this is confusing also for the airlines. They don't always have the most updated requirements regarding the receiving country. So they might ask you things which are not required anymore and then hold on to that thought and not allow you to board. I've also heard that some people flying from the Philippines to Finland were required to show that they've actually registered to the FinEntry system. This is not supposed to be a requirement for an entry to Finland. You can just go without this, then they will question you at the airport. But some were denied entry to the plane because they didn't have this done. It's a fast thing to do. You can just do it there on the spot as well. But better safe than sorry. So we have those now. So that was it. The restrictions keep changing all the time. So just be aware of the latest restrictions before you fly out. Check if you've been vaccinated, what does that mean regarding the country you are going to. If you need PCRs, what does the airline need? Are there any changes close to the travel date? And yeah, this is not a holy grail of requirements what you will need because as said, the requirements keep changing all the time. But this was our experience. It's a lot of admin work, it's a lot of appointments, it's a lot of things to consider and read to be able to do international travel at this time of pandemic. just educate yourself, just study, just research what are the requirements before you book your flights, check what are how you can come back. So for example, in our case, coming back is another story. So we got the vaccination certificate, so we get a shortened quarantine period, but now it ends up that where we're flying back from is not a green country on the list of green countries in the Philippines. So basically we still end up, even though we're fully vaccinated, we end up doing the whole 10-day quarantine facility quarantine upon arrival. So there are a lot of changes to these requirements. When we come back, it might be already a different story. But for now, this is what was required from us. So if you're planning to do international travel, hope this helps. Kind of works as a guideline what to check and what to research, and then hopefully you get to fly out. Hopefully we get to fly out as well, which remains to be seen. But thanks for watching. See you hopefully in Finland.